When people think about retirement risk, they usually picture a stock market crash. But in my experience, market crashes are rarely what derail a retirement. It's actually the quieter risks, the ones that don't flash across CNBC, the ones that slowly compound in the background until one day you realize the income that you thought was secure isn't as secure as you believed. And if you're within 5 to 7 years of retirement, this is the most sensitive phase of your financial life because small oversights now can create permanent consequences later. So let me explain. I recently met with a couple in their mid 60s. They had over $1.2 million saved, and they were disciplined, responsible, and on track. On paper, everything looked solid, but when we ran their retirement risk report, something unexpected showed up. Their income plan failed at age 82, not because of a catastrophic market event, and not because they overspent, but because of risks that no one had stress tested. And here's what stood out most to me. Their previous advisor had focused almost entirely on growth, not income design, not tax sequencing, and not healthcare impact, just growth. But that's not uncommon. Many advisors are trained to grow money. Far fewer are trained to turn it into reliable, tax efficient, lifetime income. And those are the very different disciplines. Let me walk you through the 5 risks that I see most often. Risk number 1, sequence of returns risk. And this one is rarely discussed, but it should be. And here's the simple version. If markets decline early in retirement while you're withdrawing income, then you're forced to sell assets at depressed prices. Even if markets recover later, the damage has already been done. 2 retirees can average the same return over 20 years. One runs out of money and one doesn't. But the difference isn't return, it's timing. Write it out works when you're contributing, but it's far more fragile when you're withdrawing. And if your income plan hasn't been tested against early downturn scenarios, then you don't really know how resilient it is. And that's exactly what we evaluate during a discovery call before determining whether it would make sense to build your retirement risk report. Risk number 2, the tax time bomb. And you've likely spent decades building up tax-deferred savings, your 401k, your IRA, other pre-taxed accounts. And on paper, those balances can look impressive. But here's what's often overlooked. A portion of that money doesn't fully belong to you. It belongs to the IRS. And at some point, RMDs, those required minimum distributions, begin, and they don't ask whether it's a good year for you to take income. They simply require it. And those withdrawals, they can push you into a higher tax bracket, increase your Medicare premiums, and cause more of your Social Security to become taxable. Over time, that ripple effect can also reduce what ultimately passes on to your heirs. And so that's why tax planning in retirement isn't just about preparing a return each April. It's about carefully sequencing withdrawals, coordinating income sources, and projecting how today's decisions affect your taxes years down the road. Retirement decisions rarely exist in isolation. One move affects another, and without coordination, small inefficiencies can quickly compound. Risk number 3, healthcare and long-term care shock. If one of you needed extended care for several years, what would happen financially? Not the hopeful version, the realistic one. Extended care can cost $80,000 to $150,000 per year, depending on your location, and it rarely occurs during ideal market conditions. It happens during volatility, or after one spouse passes, or when decision-making becomes more difficult. I've seen families emotionally and financially strained, not because they failed to save, but because they didn't build a protective structure. Long-term care planning doesn't mean there's only one solution, but ignoring it almost guarantees higher costs later on. Risk number 4, growth-only planning. Sometimes the biggest risk is subtle. If your advisor primarily discusses beating benchmarks, asset allocation, and long-term averages, but rarely discusses income reliability, withdrawal efficiency, tax minimization, and survivor income planning, then you may have accumulation guidance in a distribution stage of life. Of course, growth still matters, but retirement is about income durability. You don't retire on a portfolio balance, you retire on dependable income. And dependable income must be engineered intentionally. And risk number 5, widowhood financial shock. This one is deeply personal. Statistically, one spouse will eventually manage finances alone, and it's often the wife. And I've seen too many women inherit complex accounts, reduced income, higher tax brackets as a single filer, and advisors who primarily built relationships with their husbands. That transition can feel overwhelming. But holistic retirement planning includes survivor income mapping, beneficiary coordination, clear estate alignment, and making sure both spouses understand the strategy. Because peace of mind comes from clarity, not just numbers. Most pre-retirees don't lack investments, but they do lack integration. They usually have some accounts, a Social Security estimate, maybe a pension, and an advisor focused on growth, but no coordinated retirement income system. So that's why I developed the Retirement Risk Report process. After nearly 25 years hosting Retire Financially Fit, writing the book, and helping families navigate retirement transitions, one thing is clear. You shouldn't guess your way through retirement, and you don't have to. If you're within 5 to 7 years of retirement, or you're already retired with $500,000 to $1 million or more saved, this is your window to evaluate risk properly. Not after a downturn, not after R&Ds begin, not after a health event. Now, we start with a free discovery call where, if appropriate, we'll gather your information. At a second meeting, we present your personalized retirement risk report, and only then do we decide whether working together makes sense. There's no pressure, just a structured process. Imagine sitting down knowing your income is mapped out for life. Your taxes are modeled proactively. Healthcare contingencies are addressed. Your spouse is protected, and your legacy is coordinated. That's what retiring financially fit truly means. So if this resonates with you, click the link in the description and schedule your discovery call today. And we'll determine whether building your retirement risk report makes sense. And if it does, we'll identify exactly where your plan is strong and where adjustments could improve long-term resilience. And if it doesn't make sense, I'll tell you that too. Either way, you'll leave with greater clarity, and clarity in retirement is priceless. Remember, the biggest retirement risks aren't the dramatic ones, they're the quiet ones. Let's make sure they're not quietly shaping your future. Thanks for watching.